This week on Quality Digest Live, we discuss how mass customization is changing the face of quality.
Plus, we learn the value of a good argument. That and more when we come back.
This episode of Quality Digest Live is brought to you by TÜV SÜD Sign up for TÜV SÜD free webinar at www.tuvsudamerica.com/incorporating OHSAS 18001 to learn about OSAS 18001.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for September 7th, 2012. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richmond, publisher of Quality Digest.
And I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
I knew it was something like that.
You knew it was coming.
I knew it was coming. Wait for it.
Yeah, I'm thinking,
you know, things like that, positions, titles, I always forget them.
I don't know what anybody does around here.
But he's Dirk Ducharme.
Yeah. Okay, the Society of Manufacturing Engineers, SME, will be playing a key role in the new National Additive Manufacturing Innovation Institute, otherwise known as NAMI, I think is what they're calling it, NAMII. The $30 million grant was awarded to the National Center for Defense Manufacturing and Machining as a partnership between dozens of companies, universities, and nonprofit organizations in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. The goal of the Pilot Institute, scheduled to launch in September 2012, is to increase the successful transition of additive manufacturing technology to manufacturing enterprises within the United States. Now, as a lot of you know, additive manufacturing was identified by the Advanced Manufacturing Partnership as the technology with the most potential to enhance U.S. manufacturing abilities. Additive manufacturing, sometimes called 3D printing or rapid prototyping, is a group of technologies that build up objects by adding materials, usually by laying down many thin layers, as opposed to traditional machining that creates objects by cutting material away. Now, we've covered additive technologies on the show several times in the past. So everything from very simple 3D printers that you can actually buy and have at home, but what SME is talking about is very high-end 3D printing, essentially. Mm-hmm. By the way, these things are amazing. They print in plastic, they print in metal, they print in all sorts of stuff.
Didn't we cover a story where they can extrude organic material as well?
Organic material, the 3D printing organs.
Yeah.
Houses. There's a guy who's getting ready to 3D print a house.
Yeah,
exactly.
Crazy.
So this isn't what SME is involved in. I don't believe so. I think they're talking about actual manufacturing parts, not organic or otherwise. I don't think SME is involved in that. In any case, SME will be involved in the technology transition and dissemination, as well as the education and training of the practitioners. Through the Institute, SME has been instrumental in advancing additive manufacturing technology since the mid-1980s through its rapid technologies and additive manufacturing community. And as the organizer of RAPID, many of you go to RAPID, the Additive Manufacturing Solutions event that probably, I think, most of you are familiar with. Actually, we've never been to RAPID.
We got to go.
We got to
go.
Interesting show. It's a great show.
Yeah, interesting stuff. That's, you know, hey, we always like to present the cutting edge technologies that manufacturers are using either now or experimentally are being used.
Sure.
They're going to push the envelope for the way that we're going to manufacture, not just now, but in the coming decades.
And SME obviously is always on it.
SME is on it. Really good stuff. Good story there. So check out the link right below the player page there. Okay. Also in the news this week, a new report from the American Customer Satisfaction Index, or ACSI, that's them, indicates that customers are satisfied with major purchases, such as automobiles. They're satisfied, but far from ecstatic. In fact, aggregate customer satisfaction is flat so far for 2012. According to Claes Fornell, ACSI founder, the neutral data provides some insight into the stop-and-start nature of the current economic environment in the United States. Quote, says Fornell, quote, while the U.S. economy is less likely to slip back into recession, its recovery will not speed up much either. That's according again to Claes Fornell, who's the founder of the ACSI. And he's well positioned to talk about this because, again, he's looking at what customers are saying about their satisfaction levels, which obviously is a pretty key indicator for how the overall economy is going to be. This is a consumer and a product-driven economy that we're in. So.
Yeah, and by the way, kind of in contrast to story we talked about a couple weeks ago, this is actually and is recognized as customer perception. It isn't necessarily the actual quality of the products, because a lot of this is based on perception. We talked about that with the auto industry 2-3 weeks ago.
A couple weeks ago, and I'm going to actually get a little bit to that here in this story. A bright spot in the study, as we mentioned, is the automotive sector, which showed improvement for the second straight year, led by American nameplates such as Ford, GM, and Lincoln. The sector tied its all-time high of 84 on the Axis 100-point scale. It's a 0 to 100 scale, and 84 was the mark that they reached this year. And the mark was first reached in 2009 when dealer incentives and the federal government's Cash for Clunkers program helped jumpstart what was then a desperately struggling U.S. auto industry. So essentially what we're saying is the AXI report says that in terms of automotives, the satisfaction is the highest it's ever been, and it's tied what it was in 2009. But again, in 2009, that improvement had to do with price and promotions. Now it's having to do with something that's much more near and dear to all of our hearts: better quality.
Right, which is interesting because it's, and you're going to get on this.
I'm going to get on this. It's interesting.
It's very interesting.
Again, according to Fornell, and this is a quote directly from Claes Fornell, and I think we can roll that quote if we have it there, Christopher. There you go. Again, according to Claes Fornell, an ongoing commitment to quality seems like a workable formula for sustaining both customer satisfaction and sales growth. Again, that's from Claes Fornell. He's talking about why the growth is happening right now, why people are more satisfied than they were. Meanwhile, foreign brands that once led this report, such as Toyota and Honda, are showing definite signs of slippage. Some of that may have to do with the lingering disruptions from Japan's devastating 2011 earthquake and tsunami. Now, a number of high-profile recalls to those nameplates really hasn't helped matters either for Honda and Toyota. Meanwhile, remember now, again, we're going to get back to this point you just mentioned, Dirk. Remember, this is a survey of satisfaction, which is a highly subjective value for consumers. So, yet again, we return to that same discussion we've had a few times in recent weeks, the perception versus reality, where when you look at automotives, there's a perception many times of that the quality isn't as good as it is, both for American nameplates and foreign manufacturers. People say, it's not as good as it was, they're having recalls, whatever it is, but yet, when they look at the numbers in terms of the J.D. Power initial quality survey, they're actually better. Quality is improving, but the perception is that it's not. And again, in automotive manufacturing, we see this the most.
Although this seems to be in contradiction to that.
It does. There's a lot of crosswinds blowing here. Again, the customer satisfaction is better than it was, yet, again, perceived quality is that it's worse. Yet, the numbers show from the J.D. Power report that quality is actually up. There's a lot of different things going on here. So, for more information on the report, you can check out the link right below the player page right there and check it out for yourself.
Okay. Well, typically on this show,
yes.
And in our online articles, that's what I was going to say.
Yes.
When we talk about manufacturing processes, we're talking about processes that produce multiples, tens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of the same part. So usually on the show when we talk about production, we're talking mass production. And in a mass production system, even though the goal is zero defects, you still plan for a certain amount of failure, right? And you understand that you may have a part that doesn't make it through quality control. And in many industries, process yield is factored into how many parts you plan on producing. But what if your product is one-offs, all customized parts? In that case, one bad part is actually a yield of 0. A 100% reject rate on that part. If you're only making one part, you can't have rejects, essentially. Either that or you're completely remaking the part all over again, which means you're doubling your production run. I mean, it's crazy when you actually start looking at the numbers. Well, that was the issue faced by a company called Skinnett. Skinnett has been building and managing on-demand, one-off manufacturing systems since 2005, and these include decorating or converting vinyl films, optical films, Gorilla Glass, that's the really heavy-duty glass or really strong glass you see on the faces of phones and iPads and that sort of stuff, molded plastics and aluminum parts. Skinnett also licenses its on-demand platform, which powers programs for several Fortune 500 companies, including HP, Microsoft, and ResMed. And just a little bit of clarification, what Skinnett does, they will custom make laptop covers, phone covers, that type of thing, where these are individual to a particular user, and sometimes actually for a product line and that sort of stuff. So these are all basically one-off items. So in his article, How On-Demand Manufacturing is Shaping the Future of Quality and Reliability, Daryl Kuhn, Skinnet's Chief Technology Officer, discusses the change in quality control coming about as a result of mass customization. Kuhn says, quote, "Quality control is an evolving science, but a sea change is on the horizon that will force a revolution and arm quality professionals with orders of magnitude more data, finer grain controls, and ultimately result in better overall process and finished product," end quote. Kuhn outlines what he sees as the 3 major influences over the next decade driving transformational change in floor management and quality systems. The first one is what he calls the demand for on-demand. We've talked about this before on the show. The internet, probably more than any other influence, is driving customers to expect custom-made products. They want instant gratification. If I want it, I can Google it and I can get it immediately. This is driving industry across the board. All across the internet, particularly if you search, it's very easy to find a multitude of digital products. And customers are beginning to expect, as with digital products, that they can customize it and get it exactly the way they want it. With digital products, this is very easy, right? It's basically online. Mm-hmm. If you want a reading experience or a web experience customized for you, it's very easy to get. Even printed products delivered to you directly. Mm-hmm. And customized. But this is a much different deal when we're talking about hard products, things that actually have to be physically manufactured. There's a whole problem in that, as we discussed earlier, is how do you make sure that a part going through the manufacturing process is going to be right the first time, because it basically has to be. Right. So the second part of this, so the first was the demand for on-demand. The second is technology, and we're talking about here RFID tracking. Forget about tracking batches or lots. With mass customization, each and every part has to be tracked through the manufacturing system, because every part is in itself a unique product. Mm-hmm. So to perform unique manufacturing operations on that part, you need single piece tracking, and RFID fits the bill for this because it's much easier to automate RFID scanning than, let's say, barcode scanning. And Skinnet has really done something pretty interesting with RFID and barcodes. I like this. They use the RFID tags to track their products, their customized products, through the manufacturing process. Once they're done, they pull the RFID tags off and reuse them. RFID tags are relatively expensive when you talk about tracking. Barcode is super cheap. RFID tags actually have some cost associated with it. So they can actually reuse those RFID tags. But additionally, they also barcode the product, not for tracking through the manufacturing process, but basically for lifetime tracking. Mm-hmm. So they're using actually both of those technologies to give them a lot of data. And that's the third bit of this. So we've got on-demand, RFID tracking to handle the on-demand, and finally, in a way, pulling it all together is all of this data. We're talking lots of data, big data. Imagine the kind of data mining you can do to isolate production problems and so forth if each and every part is tracked. You know exactly who, what, when, where, which pieces of equipment were used to manufacture that part. Imagine being able to look at field returns and being able to extract what is common about them, because everything is known about every part. Last week on the show, we talked about an article from Minitab analyst Don Keller about what to do when you don't have enough data. Now you have so much data that new tools are actually having to be quickly developed to help companies mine these nuggets of useful information from terabytes of data. So this is driving a whole other industry, the whole big data thing, the whole data mining thing. So, I don't know, to me this is really exciting. I mean, this is really amazing stuff. We as quality professionals need to know how today's market is driving the face of quality control. And today's market is all about mass customization. It's not about tracking laptops anymore. It's about tracking your laptop, your very laptop, my laptop, Ryan's laptop. It's about tracking specific pieces of equipment through the whole process life cycle and the product life cycle. Customers are just demanding more and more of this, and it's really driving, the whole mass customization thing is really driving what's going on in the quality market, I think.
It's interesting, and a couple things came to me as you were talking about the story, that the idea of data and big data, and we also covered that last week in the news piece. We talked about big data versus open data, and really that's what it comes down to now. Is we're at the point now where these large organizations can have so much knowledge of what their customers want, what their preferences are, and there's so many ways to get that, but the key thing now is, how do you find it? How do you sort it? How do you mine it? And how do you understand what those key things are? Because amount of data, but there might only be a couple of pebbles in there that are really, really key to service those customers properly. And is that a quality issue? Heck yeah, it's a quality issue.
Yeah.
Is understanding what your customers want. I think that's the ultimate in quality, is understanding what your customers want and giving it to them. So yeah, this is interesting, really interesting stuff that we're talking about.
I mean, mass customization, I mean, this isn't new, but it really is becoming easier and easier. And particularly, we just talked about additive manufacturing. Well, we've heard about print on demand for, let's say, printed material, right? But you really are starting to get to the point of print on demand for 3D printing, where you can order custom parts that are actually literally 3D printed for you. How do you track that?
Anything. It's the thing about this is that we're entering the realm now of customers really having more and more control. As consumers, we've always been so passive for so long. You kind of, you had a choice for what you wanted to buy, but ultimately it was like, you had 3 colors to choose from, right? Now it's like, hey, invent your color, make it up yourself, and we'll service it. We'll serve you that exactly the way that you want it.
And the other thing that's happening, we can go on this further. The other thing that's happening is, okay, you used to go out and buy a product, and let's just say, for instance, a laptop.
Sure.
So you buy a laptop. So you've heard good reviews about it, you get it, and it works good, and it has most of the functionality that you want, but maybe it doesn't do this, or it doesn't do that. And you just kind of say, well, it's a mass-produced product. You may not think that, but in your mind, hey, it's not going to do everything I want, because they're cranking out millions of these. But if you order a product specifically made for you, when you get it, you will expect that it does actually every single thing that you want it to do, because that's what you asked for. You're not going to deal with, well, they made 100 million of these. I can't expect it to do everything. No, I asked it to do everything. I asked it to have these features. If it doesn't, you're going to go back to that manufacturer and say, hey, where is it?
And that's not even the end game. The end game is not to serve the customer with what his or her identified needs are. The key end game is to serve that customer with the unidentified needs. So he or she doesn't even know that he or she wants that, and you give it to them, and they're like, wow, I can have all that and this? That's when you really have customer loyalty, and that's really what the end game is for these manufacturers. This is something that's
a cool story.
This is cool. This is really what we're talking about here in this industry that we're in, is how you do that work well. Serve your customers better, and we're going to keep our eye on this going forward.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Dirk. Okay, good stuff. All right, well, I have an article this week that I wanted to cover, which we actually ran on Tuesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily, from the American Management Association. And the piece was called, again, Why a Good Argument Might Be the Basis for Better Management at Work. Why a good argument?
Conflict, baby.
Conflict, well, Dirk, you and I
disagree with you.
Okay, that was fun. You and I, we never have arguments.
No.
Not ever. I don't think we've ever had one. And certainly nobody here ever has arguments. We get along swimmingly all the time. So, we're a millennium,
okay, see?
We're a conflict-free organization here. Well, we hope. We would like to be, but maybe we wouldn't like to be, because that's really the point of the story is there's this perception that conflict is bad, right? A conflict is what you want to try to avoid. And many of us are just, by nature, we don't like conflict. We want to avoid it, right? But what this AMA story is talking about, again, it ran in Tuesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. What it's talking about is the idea that conflict really brings a lot to the table when you manage it properly. And this is another one of those soft and squishy-ware management stories that we like to cover, that I love to cover, because this is important stuff. And it deals with how you get the most out of your people, and not just to wring them dry, but you get the most out of your people to have them be satisfied and have them also contribute to the organization. So you want to manage conflict in a good, healthy way. You want everybody to be able to kind of get their thoughts out there. You want others in the team to be able to rub up against those thoughts and have their own contributions to it, and maybe those opinions change. What you're trying to avoid here, as the article indicates, is you're trying to avoid the groupthink. Right. That old Orwell term, groupthink. You're trying to avoid that homogenized flavor that everybody feels the same way, and nobody ever wants to stand up and make a change. Because if you do that, if that's the organization you have where people are afraid to make a change or afraid to challenge the conventional wisdom, what's going to happen? You're never going to grow. Right? I mean, we know that conflict creates growth, again, if it's managed right. You can't have this runaway conflict where it's getting emotional or personal, or people are really feeling that they can't meet on common grounds, and they're so entrenched in their opinions that they can't meet. So you don't want that. You want to be able to manage it properly. And that leads to a couple of points that this article talks about, both of which are favorite points of mine, favorite things that I love. One of them is American history, and the other one is baseball. Two things I love. The first
history and baseball.
The history of baseball. That's who won the World Series. Yeah. Who won the World Series in 1914? I forget. Anyway, but history. The first thing that we talk about is one of my favorite books, a recent book by Doris Kearns Goodwin, a renowned U.S. historian. Doris Kearns Goodwin wrote a book called Team of Rivals, which I read. Fantastic book. You should read it. Everybody out there should read it, because it really talks about management, and it deals with Abraham Lincoln's cabinet. His cabinet of 1860 to 1865, 1861 to 1865, when he was in office before he was assassinated. And he had some of the most talented people that ever were in a cabinet in American history. And they were very, very different group of men, all men in those days. These men were very different people. They had very different viewpoints. Some were very conservative, some were very liberal, and they all were very intelligent, all were very, very talented, and they didn't agree. And the book talks about the conflicts that these different people had with each other, and it talks about how Lincoln managed it, and Lincoln managed it beautifully. He kind of manipulated it a little bit too, but he played one against the other. He got what he needed out of it, which was he kept the country unified through that horrible Civil War, and eventually they won that horrible Civil War. And his team of rivals that made up his cabinet ultimately came to realize that he was the master politician. He was the master manager of this. And he was able to get the best out of them. And they through that, emerged the ability to understand what the country needed to do in all the different realms, and the economics of it, the military performance, all that. The other example that is used in this piece is baseball, as I referred to. And the study that they looked at that was referred to was this idea that baseball teams do better if there's diverse backgrounds. So when you have people from different countries, different nationalities, and they have different viewpoints, and they have different skill sets, those things all, again, rub against each other, and the net result is it's a better team. So teams that are more diverse, have more of those diverse backgrounds, do better. They win more World Series. They have a higher winning percentage than teams that are more homogenized. What does it all mean? Okay, those are just examples. What does it all mean? What does it mean for you and me? It means that you have to, as a manager, understand that conflict is a good thing if it's managed properly. You have to understand that you can help your team to grow and develop, and help your organization to grow and develop if you foster that. Let those opinions come out, avoid the groupthink, and challenge each other. And as a manager, challenge your employees and have them challenge each other, because what's going to come from that is going to be a better organization. That's really what the story is about. I like this one. Again, it's squishy-ware, but it's important squishy-ware. It's important stuff, because ultimately the human element in your organization is what's going to determine how good of an organization you have and how successful you're going to be at serving your customers, which is what all this, again, boils down to.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to have, so if I understand what you're saying right, is what made Lincoln's cabinet work was actually the fact that there was this conflict and these whole vastly divergent ideas and opinions and so forth.
Between guys like Seward and Bates and Salmon Chase and these guys that were legendary, politicians and had amazing skill sets, but were very egotistical and very different. Again, they knocked heads against each other often, and Lincoln had to keep them in line. Yeah. Because he managed it properly. He didn't let it get emotional, or very, very infrequently to get emotional. He was able to keep them on track. And again, you talk about a situation where there's a lot going on. They're managing a civil war. They're managing a war within a nation, and there's men dying, and there's huge amounts of money going out of the treasury. It's difficult times to manage that, but he was able to do it. Lincoln was the master manager. Amazing, amazing. I mean, if you never respect for Lincoln before, read this book and you'll see. And I believe that the Steven Spielberg movie that's coming out later this year on Lincoln, Daniel Day-Lewis is going to play Lincoln. Be ready for that one. That's going to be great. Yeah. It's based on Doris Kearns Goodwin's book, Team of Rivals. And a great book. Like I say, read that book if you haven't read it before. Really, really good reading.
Interesting.
Yeah, good stuff.
Okay, good story.
All right.
All right. Well, actually, before we wrap up here, just want to remind everybody that IMTS is coming up. Probably a lot of you are heading out to IMTS. We're going to be at IMTS. We're doing something really fun at IMTS.
We are.
We're doing a TechnorazziLIVE. But unlike our other TechnorazziLIVEs where we just focus on one company's products, we're going to be looking at a couple of products from two different companies, FARO and Zeiss. But we're going to be looking at it, and this is what's interesting, we're going to be looking at it from one of their common clients' perspectives. Pratt Miller Racing uses both FARO and Zeiss equipment. And a spokesperson from, actually, is it the
Pratt Miller?
Is it Pratt Miller?
Yep, we have a Pratt Miller spokesman there. We also are going to have presenters from FARO and Zeiss.
And Zeiss.
And you.
And me. I will be there. But basically, it's kind of, it's being, the whole kind of flavor of the broadcast is going to be led, for the most part, by Pratt and Miller because they're the customer. And what they're going to be talking about is how they're using FARO technologies to do some types of measurements, how they're using Zeiss technology to use other types of measurement. And I'm really excited to be doing this because this is something that you just don't talk about much. If you're a client, you're not using just one company's piece of equipment, you're using a bunch of companies of equipment. That's the reality. So to be able to have a show together where we're going to have two different vendors and their common customer, that's going to be an interesting show. So we really invite you to come and attend that.
That's right. And that's going to be on Thursday, this coming Thursday.
That's right.
On September 13th.
11 a.m. Pacific.
11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, and 1 p.m. local time there in Chicago. So if you're going to be at IMTS, come by the booth. And check that out at FARO Zeiss. You can't miss it. It's a humongous booth.
It's a humongous booth, yeah. It's a combined FARO and Zeiss booth.
Yep, so. With a beautiful Corvette.
A Corvette parked right in the middle of it. There you go,
check
from
that
Pratt
out.
Miller.
That's right. And but if you can't be there, check it out. You can actually register for the event right below the player page there. There's a registration form, and you can see it right from the comfort of your office. That's going to be Thursday, September 13th. 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. You can register for it right there, and we'll see you there.
All right.
Thanks. All right. Well, that is the show. Before we wrap up, I want to, of course, thank our sponsor for this week, TÜV SÜDAMERIKA. Learn more about how your business can increase energy efficiency, reduce energy costs, and save money by implementing an energy management system. Sign up for TÜV SÜDAMERIKA's free webinar, ISO 50001-2011 Energy Management at www.tuvamerica.com/50001webinar. You can also click on the banner right just below, or if you're watching this on demand, just to the bottom right of the player page right there.
Okay, well, once again, thank you for joining us for Quality Digest Live, and see you next week, hopefully, TechnorazziLIVE.
That's right, and we'll be doing a QDL from Chicago as well.
And we'll also be doing a QDL from Chicago.
Next week, you'll see our QDL from Chicago, and we'll see you then.
So long.
Bye.
Additive.